Hi everyone, today I'd like to talk about Boston's Freedom Trail. And I was very pleased to take a look at this because my wife and I have talked about going to Boston and actually going on the trail and visiting several of the sites. And this examination of it, I think, has really helped me and will help me prepare for the trip and to make it a very worthwhile and educational experience. Because of the fact that you get to deal with historical sites. You get to be where some of these major battles were fought. You get to be in the same building where some major decisions were made. It's a very powerful tool to teaching history, but it does have some drawbacks, and I'll get to that. The trail itself is 2.5 miles long. You follow a red path to various sites and locations, and some of the sites that deal with our course in particular are the Old South meeting room, and it was there that a meeting was held, and at the end of it Sam Adams stood up and basically said the meeting has done what it can, it can do no more, and the Boston Tea Party followed. There's the site of the Boston Massacre, there's Paul Revere's house, there's the site of the Old North Church, where a lookout was held to see if the British were coming. The famous poem says, "One if by land, two if by sea," referring to the lanterns hanging out of the window. There's the site of the Bunker Hill Monument, where the Battle of Bunker Hill was fought. And one of the main attractions, for me at least, is the USS Constitution, the frigate, very famous frigate. But in including that in the Boston Freedom Trail, it really shows some of the drawbacks of the trail itself, and that's the fact that it's not a unified narrative. It's not as though it's the Boston Revolutionary War Trail. It involves different buildings, and the ship itself is not from the Revolutionary War. The United States didn't have a navy at that time. So a certain amount of knowledge and education is required in order to fully appreciate the trail, because it is a very powerful thing to be able to be on the battlefield, to see the building where famous people lived, to see the building where important decisions were made, to be on the ship where men lived and died and made war. All of these things are very powerful, but they require a knowledge of context. And I think that's something that Alfred Young brought to the table in his article. We need an understanding of the events themselves, of the people, the society, and the atmosphere, in order to appreciate fully and have an accurate understanding of the sites, the buildings, and all of these things that we get to feel and see in the Boston Freedom Trail. And so that is one of the things that I'm going to take into consideration whenever we go, is that whatever things I'm going to look at, I need to have an understanding of what occurred and what part they played in the history. And the second drawback, and it's not really a drawback, in the fact that there's just so many things to see, and in 2.5 miles you will have a hard time compressing all of that into a single day's journey. So the fact that there's so many things, and 2.5 miles is a pretty good distance. It requires the student to choose what they're going to visit and to choose how long they're going to stay there. But nevertheless, I think the Boston Freedom Trail and other sites like it are important because they bring you to history, to a location, and to a thing and a place. And that is a very powerful thing, a powerful means of connecting the present to the past. In the Bible, the temple itself was a sacred space. It was a location you go to. And I think some of these historical sites are like a sacred space. You go, and the barrier of location is brought down, even if the barrier of time itself is not removed. So I'm looking forward to going to the Boston Freedom Trail, and I hope you do as well. Thank you for your time.